Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever Alexander Dawson School Zoomcast. This is the brainchild of Roxanne Stansbury, who's going to be joining us, and some others. And what we're really hoping is that this becomes a three-part series, for us as a school, and it becomes an opportunity for listeners and viewers out there to learn more, not about Dawson so much, but really about what's happening as it relates to the world of education. Since COVID-19 has taken place here at Dawson, we've shifted, very dramatically to virtual and distance learning, which has allowed us, to better understand, our students, our mission, some of our primary purposes. And we're hoping that what we've learned, we can share with others. So to that end, we've got a great panel, of folks out there today. And we thought we could start by introducing everyone. And they're going to introduce themselves by giving their name, their position at Dawson, and we really care deeply at Dawson about social emotional learning and taking the time to check in with one another. So they're also going to share in one word what they're currently feeling. So we'll start with Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Stansbury. I am the assistant head of school for teaching and learning. And I think you've already stumped me with that, that check-in, because I don't know that there's a word that can really capture fluctuating. That's my word, because I fluctuate in feelings and ideas, and I think just my comfort level with our new normal.
Hi, I'm Dana Walton. I am a fifth grade math teacher and advisor at Alexander Dawson School. I feel committed. That's the word that I would use to describe my feeling right now because, yeah, it's a hard journey, but I am very committed to doing what needs to be done for our students and also for my team.
I'm Kelly Gooden. I teach 5th and 6th grade science, and I'm a 5th grade advisor. And my word is going to be hyper enhanced. I'm not sure if that's an adjective, but I just feel like I'm on 11 with everything that I am doing personally, professionally. It's just all happening.
I'm Crystal Miller. I teach orchestra and music technology, as well as a 6th grade advisory. The word I'm going to go with is what first came to mind, which would be I feel content. And I think that came along with me kind of accepting a lot of these new realities. And, you can almost drive yourself crazy if you don't kind of just accept everything that's going on around you. And no, I don't feel happy and I don't feel sad really. It's just kind of like a contentness that came with all of this.
Hello, I'm Peter Benitez. I teach middle school Spanish, and I'm a 7th grade advisor. The word I'm going to use is excited. Right now I'm feeling excited because I've been learning so much, including this. This is new to me. This hasn't always been the feeling throughout this journey, but right now I'm excited and I'm ready to go.
My name is Shane Marsan. I'm a 2nd grade homeroom teacher. I was going to say excited too, but Peter stole it. What word? I would say kind of like, I don't know. I'm going to do 2 words. Sorry. I'm like busy, relaxed, where I'm at the same time very busy, but also I have lots of time where I can just play guitar for a little bit, or I could go outside for a little bit. So it's kind of a new, maybe there's a new word we have to invent for it.
Mm-hmm.
And for everyone out there, Andrew Bishop, Assistant Head of School for Advancement. The one word, for me, throughout this time and today, is just grateful, fortunate, grateful and fortunate to be surrounded by such, inspiring, educators and community members, and fortunate to be a part of the Alexander Dawson, community that's committed in so many ways to serving not just the students at Dawson and their families, but their growing commitment to serving kids and teachers, across the country. So thanks so much. So before we hear from our distinguished, panel, I thought there's a couple, questions I'm hoping, Roxanne, you could answer. I hear a lot of, terminology and buzzwords around now as it relates to distance learning. So maybe before we kind of do a deep dive into some of what the things that we're thinking about and experiencing at Dawson, my first question is like, how do you define virtual learning, or how do you define distance learning? Are they synonymous with one another? If you could give us just kind of an overview of the difference between distance learning or virtual learning and how we should describe those things.
Sure. I think really what you're talking about, not so much the term, but what's the level of self-directed learning that is prevalent or identified in the model that you're using. So I think you can say virtual, you can say distance learning, but then as an organization, you have to say, what does that mean to us in relation to self-directed learning? Right now, we're looking at a program that is hybrid. We've got asynchronous, which means that the students are receiving the content from a teacher, but that they're working on it independently. They have access to a teacher if they have questions, but it's not in real time. We also have elements and components of synchronous teaching, which means every student logs on at the same time and they're watching a teacher doing live teaching. And so those terms, I think, can be really misleading for anybody that hears virtual or distance, because it could mean so many different things. A program that is 75% synchronous means kids are engaged with the teacher most of the day. Those hybrid models can really be differentiated according to what a school's mission and vision is. I think another big differentiator is developmental appropriateness. So I think the immediate response that people feel is just do school and do it live. Well, that looks different for a 13-year-old than it does for a 6-year-old, and what is appropriate. So when we made this pivot, Andrew, we had to really dig deep and start to look at what's best practices according to our students' developmental needs. And we also had to realize, like, we don't know the answers yet because we haven't had to do this in our previous teaching, and that we need to go slow before we go fast so that we can learn about our students' needs and what kind of foundational skills do they need to be ready for those different modalities. So, our first week of distance learning was really about how do we keep the human element in our education? How do we allow our students to feel connected, because we know they are pretty nervous about this big change that happened pretty much overnight. And then what skills do they need to be able to thrive in an online setting? There's so many skills when it comes to time management and, being able to be an advocate for what your needs are in this type of environment, that we wanted to make sure they had those skills before we rolled out what our program would look like.
No, thanks for that. You did an excellent job, as always, for me, of taking complex ideas and simplifying them, into some sound bites that always make it, helpful for folks out there like me that might be a little obtuse, when it comes to the teaching, and learning side of things. I think it's also worth mentioning to our listeners out there, we're going to accompany this Zoomcast to a blog. And in that blog, we'll list out, how we're defining, some of those terms here at Dawson. Maybe the last question, for you, Roxanne, before we hear from our panel, would be just in terms of some really broad brushstrokes. How is it that Dawson and the teachers and the staff, at Dawson transitioned so quickly from being in class to taking on a virtual learning model?
Yeah. I would think there's two specific things that I would point to answer that question. One is we start with an effectiveness rubric. And so as a school, being able to say, when we go online, what are the components of distance learning that a student should experience no matter which classroom they're in? It was kind of like here's our bottom line non-negotiables about what a gradual release model looks like as we transition to distance ed. And that's kind of been that core expectation of how we are operating in this world and still having this cohesive thread in what that Dawson experience looks like. Another initiative that we did right from the bat that I think has made a really big difference is our teacher effectiveness coaches. So we took some of our faculty members who are not responsible for instructional design, like our counselors and our librarian and our coordinator of student services. And we assigned them each to a grade level, and they were allowed to join the online classes as a student and be able to say, this is what it looks like from a student point of view, and give that feedback to teachers so that they could calibrate pretty quickly on the go. I think one of the biggest challenges of teaching online is that you're doing it to the sea of faces that you can't see. And teachers rely on that, being able to see the confused looks on a kid's face or complete disengagement, and they know when the kids are reaching a point of cognitive overload. In an online world, you're just throwing it out there and you have no idea how it's being received. And so our effectiveness coaches, I think, were extremely responsive. They were gentle in their feedback, but they were able to say, like, hey, you know, from a sixth grader point of view, I think it's really hard to navigate, and we need more headers, or we need more labels, or you need to kind of organize this classroom in a way that you're not missing some really important steps for the learner.
No, absolutely. And so thank you for that, you know, Roxanne. Now I'll invite, you know, the rest of our panel, you know, into this conversation, and really, you know, spending a lot of time, you know, kind of thinking about this first question, because I think one reality across the nation and across the world, no matter what we do, you know, as human beings and professionally, we've all been challenged to our core as we adopt new patterns and new routines, and things change. So really kind of curious to know, you know, from someone on the panel, how has the distance learning transition challenged your self-efficacy about teaching, and what does that look like, and how has that felt?
I can answer that question because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. One thing that as a teacher, you have to think about, you know, one part of teaching is teaching, but another part is being an entertainer as well. So as a teacher, you always have to think about, whoever you're teaching, are they engaged with what you're teaching? So one thing that I've had to think about is, you know, when I'm in the classroom, I can be as silly or as zany as I need to be to really get kids interested, or I can tone it down. It's really easy to do it in real time. But now with distance learning, I have to think, okay, if I want this lesson to take about 45 minutes, because parents are going, you know, look, I have to do my job. If the kids are doing distance learning, we need sort of some time where I'm not sitting there with them the whole day. So I'm starting to think, how can I create a really engaging lesson that the kids can also do by themselves, but it also is challenging them to get that, whatever the +1 is for them, on where I can't be right next to them scaffolding. So I'm trying to keep all of those things together. So one thing that has been really great for me is just being patient and really taking my time to think, okay, what should I do step for step for the kids or students to be able to understand what to do next, so they don't have to run to their parents all the time, but also keep it engaging enough to where it's something that they want to actually do, and it's not just busy work for them.
No, absolutely. And I really appreciate, you know, that answer. You know, Shane, I think it speaks to the core of how committed, you know, you are as an educator, and the kids and parents, you know, in your classroom, you know. And I think, you know, for us, one thing that I've been struck by, you know, in terms of Dawson teachers too, is their ability to take on new challenges as it relates to technology. So I'd be curious, you know, from this panel, you know, what are those technology tools that you've integrated, you know, currently? But then also too, are there any of the technology tools out there that all of a sudden you're like, wow, I want to use this in the future, whether that's, you know, online, virtually, or even within, you know, the confines of the class when we're all getting back together, you know, in the future. So any technology tools out there that folks have integrated that will change or impact or improve, you know, future teaching?
Yes, I can speak to that. I have, I've been teaching for a long time, and I've considered myself to be a little bit better than mid-level technology-wise, as far as when we were in the classroom. I was using it regularly, and it was enhancing my instruction in most cases. But since we've transitioned to distance learning, I now am saying maybe I wasn't as strong with technology as I thought I was. And there are some things that I have started using that have really made my life easier as a teacher and planner, and a few things that have made some projects go a little bit better than I even anticipated that they would. But I'm just going to limit it to 3 things that I have found. I mean, they were always there, but I had never used them before. Nearpod is the first one. It's one of our big 5 that we have available, and apparently it's been available to us all year, but I had never even opened it before. And I just had some time one day early on in the distance learning process to go on there. And I was like, wow, they have a lesson that's already pre-made on the water cycle. This is exactly what I was going to talk about in 6th if we had been at school that next day. And so that has been really helpful in that it's sort of like a slideshow, but with other stuff like video enhancement, and it also stops to ask the students questions to see if they are getting whatever the main point of it is. And you as the teacher can see what they wrote for all the answers to the questions so that you can go back later and say, hey, I don't really think you got this as the definition of condensation. And then I can say who understands it without being able to see them. I can still read what they wrote and see what they understand. The second one is something that I had used before, but I feel like it's just really been enhanced, and that's the Google suite of things such as Hangouts and chats and even email and all kinds of stuff that I am learning how to do, like canned responses allow me to just with one click give answers to questions that I'm answering over and over again. So I don't have to keep typing in, please check the link on Google Classroom. I can just click on the checkbox that says, please check the link on Google Classroom. And that way I don't have to type it over and over again. I just learned earlier this week about shareable links, where you can share documents and slideshows with students without having to write everybody an email that says, I'm sharing this document with you, and then they can actually do things on the document. So that was something that I learned as of yesterday, literally. And things like Hangouts and having the students share their screen with me so that I can see what they're doing allows me to work better with them, give them better feedback, and see what's happening in real time. This is what you're doing, and this is why it's not working for you. And then the last one is Screencastify. That's another one that I had not used before, and I begrudgingly used it. I really did not want to use Screencastify. I was going to make an objection just not to use it because I just don't like the idea of my voice on tape. But as it turns out, I will admit, it has been helpful in explaining how to do some things to the students so that they can then go forth and do whatever it is that I've asked them to do in the assignment, as far as, you know, how to navigate the classroom page or whatever I'm asking them to use.
No, I just, Kelly, I love how kind of self-reflective, you are, in that, approach. And I think what we're all learning is we're all evolving, as it relates to our practice and things that we have. You've outed me in terms of, the Google auto response and canned responses. It's been one of my go-tos, for a while. I will say for our viewers and listeners out there, Nearpod, Google Suites, and Screencastify, if you want to give us free licensing agreements, in the future, we will take those for that plug. But also, in more seriousness, we'll make sure that we're linking, to those resources, here as well. Other folks on the panel, other technology tools or resources that you would use that have been insightful and helpful over these past couple of weeks?
Yes, I have one more, and the word is Flipgrid.
Yeah.
Flipgrid has been a game changer for me. I've used different ones in the past. I've used different apps, different platforms, but it was when we first heard that we were going to distance learning, and the world language departments were like, what do we do? How are we going to do this? And we started, looking into Flipgrid, and once again, it's been amazing. The focus of the World Language Department, World Languages at Dawson is to get the students to speak, right? And the target language. That's very difficult to do during distance learning. So how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna do that? So once again, we gave this a try and it's been amazing. You can post a warm-up question if you wanna get the students just talking first. You can have them record the answers to an activity and you can check their work right then and there. They can record a scene of a play. You can check for understanding, for new concepts, vocabulary words. I mean, there's so many things you can do, and it all gets done in the target language, obviously. It's very user friendly, because someone might say, oh, why not use just a different video, right? But what I like about it is very user friendly. It's engaging to the kids, because they can add little things, emojis and things like that to their video. I can give them immediate feedback as I see it and email them what I thought about their video. And you can also share the videos, and it's very organized. That's what I like about it the most. Rather than looking for everyone's video, where is it? You know, did you email it to me? Did you share it with me? It's all right there. If they did it, it's within the same class. As far as the future with this app, I'm definitely going to use it because, once again, I love it. It's organized and I can give them feedback. It's very difficult to have individual assessments for a student within one class period, even within 2 class periods. Some classes, 10 students, 15 students. Here, they can submit it when they're ready, and I can view them when I have the time, so I can really take the time to evaluate and see where they're making mistakes, and once again, just send them the feedback right away. And one beautiful thing about it is that I am shocked how comfortable the kids are with it, making videos. Like, you would think that they've been making videos all their lives. It's like, wow, how do you guys do this? And I'm even hearing a little more from students that I don't normally hear from in the classroom. They're very comfortable with it, and maybe it's being at home, I don't know, but I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
No, I think
one thing I heard, sorry, Andrew, one thing that I heard listening to both Kelly and Peter and the technologies is that they are looking at these tools that are allowing them to give very authentic feedback to our students. And I think that was a piece that we didn't want lost as we moved to this transition, that our distance learning program was going to be characterized by that personalized feedback loop that we like to give our students. And you've found technology tools that allow you to do that.
Yeah, no, I think spot on, Roxanne. What I was going to say is I think the things that I heard, from both Kelly and you, Peter, was, 2 things. One was feedback, the second was individualized, right? And I think, what means, a lot to me, not just as an employee of Dawson, but also a Dawson parent, is that we're not losing sight of that, right? And that's still what we're giving kids. And we're just finding new opportunities and new mechanisms, to be able to deliver those 2 essential ingredients that are absolutely necessary for deep learning to take place. I guess all this talk of technology is, fantastic. But one thing, I've always, struggled with, in thinking about, even pre-COVID-19, was that sometimes technology gets in the way of relationships, or gets in the way of maintaining personal connections with, students and families, but also colleagues. So I'm really curious from your seats as teachers, how are you maintaining those personal connections with students and colleagues as we've transitioned to this virtual world?
I can speak to that. So at Dawson, we are very committed to a climate of care and to supporting the students' social and emotional well-being. And that has not gone away in distance learning. And we are using technology to do so. So one of the things that Kelly spoke about was Google Meets and Google Hangouts, and we are using those to continue to maintain relationships with our advisory students. We have whole group advisory meetings where the discussions are still continuing on with, with the social piece. And then we also have one-on-one meetings that we set up with our advisees, where the students are invited and they meet with their advisor, and we discuss how they're doing, how we can support them, what they need during this distance learning time. And not only do we do it with our students, we also have meetings with our department teams. So I meet with Roxanne and the math department, and we discuss how we're doing, what we need. There's those constant check-in points, and our 5th grade team meets once a week, and student support meets with us as well. And on those occasions where there are not these set up meetings, students know that they can always reach us through Google Hangouts and just doing a quick shooting, I need to meet with you right now, I have a question, and we can get on real time and meet with them. So that climate of care is maintained even during distance learning, which is amazing.
Oh, totally. And I think it's just, I think a lot of schools use words like mission, vision, core beliefs, but it's not part of their cultural DNA. And I think what I'm really struck by, Dana, in that answer is, you referenced a core belief that I think means a lot to all of us, right? And it's become part of the fabric of our community that's still, holding us and enveloping us, in these trying times. So, thanks for that.
If I can kind of piggyback on what Dana said, one thing I've learned in this experience is that those social emotional check-ins are typically organic, or non-scheduled would be a better word, because they happen when you're in line with the students in the dining hall, or when you see them on the playground. They typically, for me at least, happen in non-scheduled times. And so it dawned on me where I was feeling like I'm losing connections with students simply because I'm not seeing their faces anyway. Every day is what I meant to say. So how can I recreate that in a virtual environment? And so I honestly learned this from the students. They're all on Google Hangout. It's almost like texting now because there's an app for it. And sometimes they'll just text me, "Hi, Miss Crystal," or they'll send me a link to their favorite YouTube video. And I was like, how hard is that for me to just randomly check in on students like that throughout the day? And not even my advisees, I'll send a student, "Hey, I saw this funny meme that reminded me of you," or anything like that, just so they're still getting that personal connection that, they hunger for, because they were so used to seeing our faces every day, sometimes more than they see their families' faces, and that was kind of stripped from them. Even though we have our synchronous classes, what was taken from them are those times that aren't scheduled, where they get to just be with the teachers and the friends that they want to be with. And so it makes their day just sending them a quick text like, "Hey," I'm calling it a text, but it's a Google Hangout, but just sending them that quick message saying that, so they feel like they're being thought about, and that you still care and love them, like every teacher at Dawson does. Same with our colleagues. I can speak on that as well. We've always been in the group text where we can send quick messages about the next advisory plan and everything. But I found now that those group texts have kind of changed more to, "How are you doing? Like, is everything okay?" Just like making sure that people are still thriving, not so much the academic piece. The academic piece is still there, but there's definitely a lot more compassion going around through the group text with my colleagues on the 6th grade advisory team.
Totally. Right. And I think, Crystal, I think you said a couple of things that really, resonated deeply with me. The first is, this idea of, as educators, we've got to communicate with kids how they communicate, right? And, I think the adaptability, our teachers, have shown, particularly in that middle school level, as they're saying, "Great, I'm going to give you what you need, and this is how I'm going to communicate," has just been, second to none. The other, thing that I think is really important is you talked about, the organic nature of just what these check-ins have been. And I think, as teachers, our first move, always is, how are my students doing? Right? And if they're someplace else, or they're distracted, right, or they're not engaged, learning can't take place no matter how great that lesson is, right? So I think that the fact that we are valuing, right, how our kids are doing and making sure that we're taking time for that, and a lot of time for it, is highly important. And the last piece is, you talked, and Dana talked about this just as colleagues. I had a parent, tell me what meant the most to them is that in this moment, Dawson's character is being revealed. And the character of our organization and institution is one of kindness and care. And I think that that extends to how we're treating one another, how we're treating each other as colleagues, how we're treating each other as friends, and how we're treating, our students. So this has been, I think we've heard from everyone on the panel so far, which is fantastic. So I'd throw this one out, and I'm hoping everyone can respond, to this next question in some form. And it's this: what adjectives would you use to describe your distance learning journey? And maybe too, if one or two of you have some big aha moments, maybe sharing those stories. But from everyone on the panel, what are 1 to 2 or a couple adjectives, to describe this journey that you've been on?
I can talk. One word that comes to mind is being meticulous. So in the classroom, if you make a mistake, you can really correct it quickly in real time. Like if I forgot this page or something, let me just go grab it real quick, or this book. But with the virtual learning, you have to really think carefully about what are all the possibilities that could go wrong and prepare for those possibilities. So I think I'm spending a lot more time just being meticulous about that.
My word that comes to mind is intentional. When I first started this virtual journey, I found that it was almost easy to kind of let go of the goals. And I found myself letting go of the goal of, like, in orchestra, them learning the next measures. Cause I'm like, well, let's just get them used to learning in this environment. But if you follow the rubric that was laid out for us, and you still tell yourself, no, they're supposed to be on this measure today, it's a lot easier to craft the lesson plan to accompany everything else that's going on. So I find myself being a lot more intentional, kind of like what Shane was saying, how sometimes, make a mistake, you just go grab a book and you can figure it out, but you have to think about everything that's going to lead the students to success.
I have 2 adjectives, and you said journey, so makes me think of my journey. I want to say challenging, but rewarding. That's honestly what I feel. In the beginning, it was quite a bit to take on, but just to see the results and see what we're doing, what everyone's doing in different classes, because I get to see their classrooms, and it's just amazing, and it's rewarding to see the type of response that we're getting from everyone, parents, students, obviously, administration, everyone. So very rewarding.
And I can add a couple of adjectives as well. I would say committed, again, which is what I started out with, but I would also say flexible. We have to be very flexible in what we're doing. And I have found that I almost feel like, I've been teaching for 20 plus years, but I almost feel as if I am in a student teaching practicum all over again, because I'm having to learn all kind of new ways to do things. And I feel like I'm constantly having to prove things and being assessed. And the assessors this time are really my students. And I feel like I have been able to, I'm surprised. I've found that I'm surprised on this journey that I've been able to plan lessons that are engaging and promote a high level of student interest and higher level thinking. And so I have to give a shout out to one of the pieces of technology, or 2 pieces of technology that I've been using to teach math. And they've been great. One is the Wacom interactive digital pen and tablet, in conjunction with one of the apps on Google Suite, which is called Jamboard. And those 2 pieces together are amazing tools for teaching math, because I can give real-time lessons, and Jamboard is like an interactive whiteboard, and the students can supply, show their thinking and supply their work, and it's just been great. And so I'm just stunned And my biggest aha moment is I can't believe that what we were doing in the classroom can be so seamlessly done through virtual learning. It's, yes, I'm not there one-on-one with them, and I can't do the temperature check by reading their faces, but I do feel like the level of commitment and engagement from the students is there.
And I have to give Dana just a shout out, because you're discovering how you can transfer something that you did in class and make it just as effective in an online world, but because you're willing to take risk. And, you know, last week, Dana said, you know what, I tried the Wacom tool and it was a disaster. And it was such a raw moment for Dana to say, like, I hated it. You know, I failed in front of my students and this doesn't feel good. But, you know, we talked about it and said, you have so many more chances. You know, the bad news is we're not coming back to school. The good news is we're not coming back to school. And you have time to make this a dynamic tool that is going to shape and change the experience for kids. And that's what she did. She just went right back, using all of the resources and modeling what we want our kids to do. When one challenge happens or a door closes, what resources, who are you going to so that you can get over that hurdle? And, you know, Dana was reaching out to the tech team and reaching out to a teacher who has used this tool in the past and everything that she could to find out how to make this work. And I think it speaks so much about the mindsets, because when we had to pivot this quickly, I think that was the game changer, not the tech tools, you know, not the rubrics that we used. It was the teacher mindsets that either made or break us. And everybody kind of just rolled up their sleeves and just said, I'm going to have to do what it takes, even if it's uncomfortable. Kelly, I don't want to miss your adjective.
You missed it and you took it away from me.
No.
Talk about a growth mindset.
Very.
Anyway, I'm also though going to add, because I really couldn't come up with one word. So a lot of the words that everybody has already said, but I think that the open growth mindset is the most aha thing that I've come out of this with, because I am in my real life kind of a control freak, and it took a couple of days to realize that there's so many aspects of this distance learning that I don't have control over and I will never have control over, but I am getting to be more open to flexibility, to pivoting and doing something else, to knowing that I might have to change what I had planned to do in my mind, because as it turns out, the students did not really understand what I was trying to say. And as far as Dana and her willingness to fail in front of her students, she was the first 5th grade teacher to go live with her lesson, because we just happened to start it on a day that she was assigned to. And apparently it went horribly, as she very quickly told all of us through a Google chat. And because though she shared all the things that had gone wrong, I was the next day, and it allowed me to be able to get some things in place so that the same thing wouldn't happen again. So it's just that flexibility, that willingness to do something, that self-reflection, it's all happening.
And you're listing all the competencies that we have on our student learner profile. So our students get to see us now as learners, and it's only making them better to see the qualities of what a lifelong learner does and what they engage.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think from what everyone, you know, shared, I think we're embracing the beautiful surprises, you know, that have come out, you know, of this month. And I think what I heard, you know, from everyone here is there are aha moments that are taking place each and every day, right? And we're embracing them, and we're moving forward with them. And I think, you know, for, you know, other teachers out there at other schools, you know, listeners or viewers out there, you know, that might be considering, you know, going into teaching, or next year will be their first year, you know, teaching. I think there is so much collective wisdom, you know, what was just shared. So maybe to that end, you know, I'd be curious to know, you know, from someone here, what is, you know, the best advice, you know, you would give a teacher from another country, or, you know, in a school district that hasn't adopted, you know, virtual or online learning yet. What are yeah, what would you say to them, in terms of, a nugget of knowledge, or a piece of advice that would help them out?
I can go. The first thing that I would say, and I think this applies to classroom teaching or in the real teaching environment, just be organized from the very beginning. If you can be organized and stay organized the whole time, that's like half the battle for me, is going, oh, where did I put that document, or what needs to get done next? So just if you can be as organized as possible, that makes up for so many other shortcomings you might have. So.
Totally. Yeah, no, it reminds me, everything, you said about organization. One of my mentors when I first started teaching, he would reference a line from Hamlet, saying the preparation is all, right? And that everything you do is about preparing. And then once you're prepared, you walk through that door, you get on the screen, good luck. It doesn't matter, right? Whether, a student, is feeling a certain way, or a class dynamic is different, a little bit, that idea of just being so highly organized that you can pivot, and take a lesson or take an idea, where it needs to go. So, thanks for sharing that. I think, to that end, too, what has transitioning to distance learning just taught you about the craft of teaching? Whether that's just kind of continual good teaching, but what are some of those, kind of takeaways you said, like, yep, I now know this now more than ever about the art of what teaching looks like?
I can answer that. So the first thing that comes to mind is how I almost surprised myself with how flexible I am, because, though it kind of happened overnight and we were starting the next day with this distance learning thing, I felt like myself, and it must have just been a teacher thing, because I could say all the teachers, kind of felt as though it was scary. We were ready. We had plans, the students were ready. And then that's also something I learned about students, is that they're compassionate and they're understanding, and they're just as flexible and, able to adapt as well as the teachers are. And honestly, I learned from them more than I've learned, from any other resource, just how easy they make technology use. And I find myself, savvy in technology as well, but they were born in it and raised in it. And so just seeing them really use it as if it's nothing, because I found myself over explaining things at first, like, okay, first you're going to do that. They get it. They're on they're with technology all the time. And so I think that was the biggest piece that surprised me, or that I took from this. And then also one of the biggest things is kind of a silver lining. I learned that this tool of distance learning is what I just said. It's a tool. I think about students who might be sick for a prolonged time, or they might be out of town, or anything like this, or any element like that. It has taught me that I can create the experience that they would receive in class online. So instead of trying, meet up with them and give them that exact same lesson, all of my lessons already exist online, and they can still stay on the same path that their classmates are staying on when school is in, without feeling behind. Because, no student wants to go on vacation and go, well, heck, I'm on this 1 week vacation, but when I get back, it's going to be, it's going to be a nightmare trying to catch up. And then no teacher wants to feel that way either. We don't want to have to catch up every student every time they're absent, because we find this impossible. And so we might even give them an alternate assignment, and God forbid they get an alternate assignment every time they are absent, because they're going to miss the actual meat of the lesson. And so yeah, I definitely found that there is a huge silver lining in all of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you used a word that means a lot to me as an educator. I discovered John Dewey when I was in graduate school, for the first time. And, he talks a lot about education being experience. And when you said, right, all I do is create experiences for kids, and this allows me now to create new experiences with the potential of kids not missing anything. I think that's something that would resonate deeply with Dewey, in the 1910s and 19-teens, in the 1920s, and we're seeing it play forward now, as well. So, thanks for reminding me, of that. The last thing, I'd ask, this group is, I've been thinking a lot about the future, and what this does, to our independent school industry, what this does in terms of education from higher ed all the way down to early childhood. And so what do you feel are the long-term benefits, right? The ideas, that have emerged, or how might what we are currently doing change the face of education in totality?
I like to expand on that one as well.
Yeah.
So it's known, and every teacher knows this, is that every student learns differently, right? And that has been extremely emphasized in this distance education experience, because like it was said earlier, you can read a student's face if they don't understand what's happening, but we don't have the luxury of experiencing that through distance education. Now, knowing that every student learns differently, what typically happens in a physical setting is that you're holding those students maybe after class, or you're setting up tutoring sessions with them. I actually found myself having to do that less virtually than I do on campus. And that's because those lessons exist in tutorial forms, like on YouTube or something. So I started creating YouTube videos, for instance, in orchestra, of the section I want them to play. So even if the student isn't the fastest learner on the planet, they can rewatch that section over and over and over again. And I learned that should exist regardless, even if it's virtual learning or if everything is back to normal, which I know we all desperately want, that should exist. It should just be a tool. So when I'm asking them to turn in homework of them practicing, they can go watch that YouTube video over and over again until they feel comfortable with it, or until they've mastered the new concept. And we teach mastery. That's a whole goal. No matter what they're trying to be, they need to master that craft. And so if they're a violinist or if they're a mathematician, creating those lessons in an online setting allows them to master that lesson on their own time, because they all learn differently, whether it's fast or slow, or they just need to learn in a different way. Having it exist online allows them to take advantage of that.
100%. I think, for me, when I think about, what the future, holds because of this, what I'm seeing schools do is they are creating a treasure trove of content. And that content is now all open source, right? And so if we go back, 10 to 15 years, how is it that Google, and Bing and all these other search engines, began to catalog, right? Basic how-to, instructions. We're going to see the same thing transpire with education. And that limit is not going to know any boundaries as it relates to age, geographical location. I'm hoping socioeconomic diversity, and that people, no matter where they live, can have access, to some of these content. But, I think more than anything else, what you said resonates with me, really, really deeply, to say, we are moving into a total open source educational economy. And we probably won't get there completely, but I think what we're going to see, right, is the cataloging of content that knows no bounds and knows no ends. And that rabbit hole will be really, really deep. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to have Roxanne, kind of close us out, on this question. And so as we, take the lead from our current assistant head of school for teaching and learning and our incoming, head of school on July 1, would love to get, your perspective, Roxanne, on how you think what we're currently experiencing will change the landscape of school and education.
Yeah. What I think that we are experiencing is a complete divide. I think education will, from now on, be referred to as before COVID-19, and then education after COVID-19, because I think it's changing the face of the landscape of education, because the needs of our students now just became even deeper as we start to look at people with vulnerable immunity systems, and how are we going to personalize learning for students who are in that situation. We know that we have 2 years, if not more, of trying to provide an education for our students who might not be ready to come back full time. And as Crystal said, we know now how to make education really mobile so that it is accessible, whether it's face-to-face or whether you're still at home. I think the reality of education right now is that, yeah, the content is going to be accessible to all, but it's how you extrapolate that content that matters when it comes to learning. And that is what I have been able to watch our Dawson teachers do. Not just throw content at kids. That's actually really easy. To package it up and just keep throwing content, That's fun. Finding the right videos and finding the right articles, sure. It's after you watch that video or after you go on that virtual museum tour, what are you doing to synthesize that information? And that's where true online instructional design comes from. And I think we've become the beacon in that area in a very short amount of time. I'm proud of the progress that we've made. I think that strong educators are always going to think from that lens and say it's less is more. You know, content and digital bombardment prevent students from being able to learn and grow and move forward. And how are we presenting our content in a way that we're carving out time for reflection and synthesis? And again, it's that transfer. It's using writing to learn and being able to process content from multiple different perspectives that really equates to learning. So again, I think that our future is exciting, it's stimulating, it's overwhelming, and now we're all just trying to get our heads around that concept of what does a fall term look like post-pandemic? What are all the implications that we need to start thinking about it? And I think we're coming at it with a lot of confidence because we were able to make this pivot so quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, I'll end, you know, by saying, you know, first and foremost, thank you to everyone on the panel, you know, Roxanne, Dana, Kelly, Crystal, Peter, and Shane. Your wisdom inspires and humbles me. I can't thank you enough for sharing this time with you, but also having the opportunity to learn from you. So thank you, you know, to the panel. You know, the other thing, you know, I'll just kind of share is we're hoping that this resource and this wisdom, you know, gets to as many educators and schools across the country and across the world as possible, right? And so please be on the lookout for the blog. Please, you know, feel free to reach out to any one of us with questions or answers. We want to be a resource because I'll end with something that Roxanne said, which is this. You know, here in the Las Vegas Valley, you know, the Alexander Dawson School is being known as a forward-thinking beacon for modern learning. It's going to be in no time, you know, that our school is known for those things and for our rich culture and our deep commitment to caring for students and families and one another, that we're known, you know, kind of around the country and around the globe. So we want to be of help as we create these things. We also want to give them away. So please, 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 you know, reach out with questions, follow us, continue to be on the lookout, you know, for the next couple episodes in this video series as we adjust to our new normal. So thanks to all you out there. Thank you to the panel. It's been great.